The big names you know. The other guys you've never heard of. Until now. This is Around the Nest. Jay talking around the Blue Jays minor league system.
This is Around the Nest. Jay talking our way around the Blue Jays minor league organization. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler, joined by the nation. Rob
What's going
Fai.
on?
Rob, how are you?
I'm fantastic, man. It's funny, the northern part of the province got their first snowfall, and it's pretty cold here by Vancouver standards. I know everybody back east just kind of rolls their eyes, but first time I've needed my parka in some time.
There are some talents that I was aware that you possessed. There were others that I was unaware. So if you're watching the video, you can see behind you and above your left shoulder, Macho Man Randy Savage. Can you take us for a tour?
So my wife just kind of shakes her head at my hobby, but I love painting 8-bit video game art. So it basically started about 6 or 7 months ago where I saw these things online and I'm like, God, I'd love to buy them, but they were like 60, 70 bucks each. And I thought to myself, well, what if I went to the dollar store and just try to do it myself? So I go and I buy like a $6, $7 canvas. I, with a ruler, create all the lines left and right and create a grid, and then just one color at a time, rebuild some of the great video games. So I hope I can do this properly, but I've got RBI baseball, I've got Duck Hunt, and I've just moved into this office where I'm at right now. So a couple of the other ones here that I've got, sorry for taking up your time here, but I just finished doing this one not long ago. This is the old first NHL hockey video game where you can hit it. And I didn't put the blood because I got 2 kids, but you can do that with Wayne Gretzky. And then I did some closer up ones of goalies. So I've done everything from Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, Glass Joe, Mike Tyson. I've done probably about 15 of them, come to think of it. And it's at the point now where people on Twitter are like, hey, man, I'd love to buy them, but I'll never sell them because I don't think they're there yet, but I do it as a hobby for sure.
Rob, this is spectacular. They aren't there yet, in my opinion. They're there, but it's up to you to determine what there is.
Well, there's like, yeah, well, if you got close enough, you'd see the mistakes in them. But for now, I'm just happy that you like them. So maybe one day I could do a Lancey Lugnut one and send it out west to you, or out east to you, and we can get that sorted out.
Mistakes, I forget which Lugnut's manager would say this. Stay humble. Stay humble. Okay. I want to ask you about, regardless of what Vancouver is as a baseball affiliate moving forward, so 2021 and beyond.
Yes.
There's been a decade of Vancouver Canadians affiliation with the Toronto Blue Jays, and you've been there, calling the games, traveling with the team, seeing the championships. What are your strongest memories of seeing the C's affiliated with the Blue Jays?
Yeah, this is something that I think you almost have to be a Canadian to truly appreciate what it was like to be a part of this once-in-a-lifetime relationship between Canada's only minor league affiliated team and the Toronto Blue Jays. I mean, it was such a great synergy on about 10 different marketing levels, but when you get down to actually being able to see behind the scenes of how the Blue Jays baseball operation worked, we got to see it with Alex Anthopoulos. We got to see it with Ross Atkins. So it was really cool to see 2 different ways of operating a major league franchise and how they handle things like the draft and player management within the minor league system. So that was really cool to kind of see behind the curtain on that front. But then just the relationships. It's so funny. You hear all these adages when a player retires after a lengthy career and they say things like, oh, well, we'll miss the relationships and the travel and the hotels and all that stuff. And you kind of roll your eyes and say, yeah. But that's essentially what you're going to miss the most is, I mean, we've had just an influx of amazing players and great coaches, everybody from John Schneider, Clayton McCullough, Rich Miller came through 2 different times, Jim Sykowski. I mean, you've seen some of these guys, Jesse, on your adventures through the Blue Jay system. So I just think when you look back at what the relationship was between these 2 coasts, it was really something that Vancouver embraced wholeheartedly. And Toronto actually took to heart as well. I mean, Jays Care was out here every year. Our luncheon every January was littered with Blue Jay prospects and Blue Jay major leaguers and Blue Jay Hall of Famer, singular. But it's been too enjoyable. I can't explain the past 10 years without, just almost getting a lump in my throat at how cool that experience was.
I loved watching the videos every year. of the Canadians team singing "O Canada." How did
Mhm.
that start?
Well, that actually started with Rick Mignante, who was a longtime manager of the Canadians back when we were with the Oakland A's. And he thought it was really cool to give back. And it initially started as just a gesture towards the housing families that were in the stands and they wanted to say thank you and do something creative. Well, that stuck. And there was no way that we weren't going to do it on a yearly basis. And what's really cool about it is you'll have one or two Canadians. The Blue Jays always seem to have a player or two, whether it was Alex Nolan or Zach Bro or Justin Atkinson or somebody with a Canadian passport. So they'd be at the front. Matty Lee Robanin would be at the front singing his heart out. And then you would have the Americans that sort of kind of knew the lyrics by the end of the summer. Then you get the Dominican guys that were just mouthing the words, but they were smiles and just happy. I think that's kind of the accumulation of an entire summer. And that to them is now just a rite of passage. And I don't think that will ever not happen in the final home game of the season now.
I remember Kevin Pillar coming to Lansing and having an American flag bandana, and somebody being like, "No, you're a Blue Jay. Here you go. Here's your Maple Leaf bandana." You
Yes.
saw great players. And one of the other things is you saw players who were not considered prospects, who then established themselves, putting themselves on the map. And you would then turn to me and say, "Jesse, here's the next guy to watch out for." Anybody stand up in your mind as a player who came in without fanfare, who established themselves in Vancouver?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of them. Some of them made them to the major leagues, and some of them got real close but didn't just get there. A couple of guys that come to mind. One of the first guys I remember coming on this show with and doing it was John Birdie. And John Birdie was one of the guys we had up the middle with Shane Opitz and led us to our first ever franchise championship back in 2011. And I just loved the way he played. Him and Tim LaCastro, I think, were cut from the same cloth, the way that they played hard-nosed, kind of, grindstone baseball. That to me was just like, it was almost like a hockey player stuffed in a baseball uniform. I think of guys like Jason Ledlebejian, who maybe didn't make it to the major leagues, but you think of just what they brought to our community. There wasn't an appearance that we had he didn't attend, and it wasn't because of the $50 stipend. It was because he genuinely wanted to be a part of the community. So, you think of the big names that come here, like the Stroman, the Sanchez, the Syndergaard, all the, the ones that you market to make sure that the tier 2 fans know that you're relevant in your market. But I think of all the relationships that I've had. I mean, even Matty Lee Romanin, whose dad Mal was a PR guy with the Blue Jays for what seems like forever. He understood what it meant to be Canadian, and I really liked that. And you could tell that he had been cut from a cloth that understood what the Blue Jay logo meant across Canada, because that was a very front-facing guy that you didn't think was a major leaguer, but at the same time conducted himself like a major leaguer. And so there's so many different ways to slice what makes a good prospect. And that it's not always guys that are destined for the major leagues. It's guys that understand what their role is and play it well.
You mentioned that championship in 2011. You had to wait so long for your next championship. Oh, wait, no, you just kept winning. And I remember guys would come into Lansing and say, we expected to win. They weren't going to beat us. Did you get that feeling certain years where there was nobody beating this team when the chips were down?
All of them. I mean, 2011, 2012, 2013. You know what's kind of funny, Jesse, and you could probably relate to this, is your regular season record, once you get into the postseason, is really irrelevant. It's just get there. And then in a minor league season where you've got a best of 3, or dare we say a best of 5, it's really just a sprint. What's really cool about those championships is in 2012 and 2013, we faced the Boise Hawks, who at the time were a minor league affiliate of the Chicago Cubs, and they were loaded. We're talking Chris Bryant, Alberto Mora, Javi Baez, Wilson Contreras. It was just an unbelievable embarrassment of riches, and we beat them twice. And the thing about those Canadians teams is we knew that if we could get that series back to Vancouver, or we started that series in Vancouver, they weren't going to beat us. And I think we had some ungodly record. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think we were like 7-1 or 7-2 in home games. And you just think of a minor league baseball player from, not from Texas A&M or some of the big schools, but, you think of these first year players, they're looking at their season averages. Some are, had good seasons, some haven't. And then all of a sudden, right at the end of the year, when you're tired, you're ready to go home, maybe you haven't played in front of a big crowd, you dip them into Vancouver. And Jesse, I swear to God, it only seats 6,000 people, but because the roof covers the seating bowl and it's all just this old stone stadium, it sounds like 18,000 because acoustically all the energy stays underneath the wall. So people will be like, dude, I've never played in a minor league stadium louder than Vancouver. And I think acoustically, I don't know if it was on purpose or by accident, but the way that that stadium holds and just kind of like a spin cycle on a washing machine keeps everything pushing out towards the fans and then back out to the players and back to the fans. The energy that it creates is second to none, which is why we were so dangerous in the postseason and did expect to win.
That makes me feel worse that there was no baseball than at the summer. So
Yeah.
that.
Well, across minor league baseball, I think the solace, this is going to sound weird, but I think the solace is we knew we weren't alone. I mean, sport across the world. I still remember the 3-day period where it went from sounds like there's a pandemic to sounds like we might shut down to driving to work at 4:30 in the morning, because at the time I was doing a morning stretch on the radio station and there was no car on the road. It was almost like something out of a movie, and it happened within like a week. And so our football team shut it down. Our soccer team had to postpone. Hockey canceled. So, I mean, realistically, in the hierarchy of Vancouver sports, we weren't the be-all, end-all. We actually had the luxury of waiting until June. So we had 3 months to keep our fingers crossed that maybe it was going to get better. But once we finally realized the season was off, furloughing your staff is the biggest gut punch I've ever experienced in my life in this industry. There's nothing even close.
All right, so here we are. You and we're talking. It's October. How did you spend your summer?
Well, my summer included retiring from the Canadians. That was one of those things where I just kind of looked at where I was in my life. I'm 46 now. I had given 14 seasons to the Canadians and had the luxury of doing some spring training games, as you had done as well, Jesse, and all of us around the nest have been able to, been fortunate enough to do. And just kind of looked around, had an opportunity to do the morning show at one of the stations in the city that unfortunately wasn't a station assigned to the Vancouver Canadians. They were with one sports property, we were with the other. So it was kind of my fork in the road. And I just thought I've put in 14 years of bus rides, 14 years of just grinding through the Northwest, and still felt that I could give baseball a voice, even though there was no baseball to be played. And pulled away. It was a really tough decision, but that was how the end of my season came to an end. But I feel if the Blue Jay partnership is over, it's the perfect seam for me to exit stage left as well, because as much as I love Oakland, and I've actually been with them before, and that's rumored, thanks to Susan Sluister with the San Francisco Chronicle, that might be the next chapter in the Vancouver Canadians history books. I'm totally cool walking out with the Blue Jays out the front door, if that comes to be.
Your circadian rhythms, though. Baseball demands that you have to be a night owl. Morning show demands that you can't be. So how's your sleep pattern? How are you sleeping?
Well, see these things right here? I have earned every one of those over 14 seasons. I raised 2 kids. I've got a son in grade 12. I've got a daughter in grade 11. And I think, Jesse, to be honest with you, and not to make this about me, I'd really like to focus on just baseball in general, but really quickly on my front, is when you hear the rumblings that your season's about to double in size, that includes a double number of road games. And I think when you've got 2 kids that are at this like pivotal point in their lives where they're starting to look at colleges and look at life after high school, peacing out in February and not coming back necessarily until, late September, they've allowed me to live my dream for 14 years. And now I've got to step away and make sure that I can help them achieve their goals. So maybe one day down the road, baseball circles back, but for now I'm content with it. And I don't know. My wife looks at me like, she goes, "You're going to go crazy at home," but I'll find something to do. And when I do, I'm sure I'll put my best foot forward and try my best at it.
How do you see baseball looking in 2021?
Yeah, I've had some great conversations with a lot of different people because one thing I learned from Alex Anthopoulos in the very brief times that we shared, conversations, is he was a sponge. He wanted to talk to everybody. He wanted to talk to the president as much as he wanted to talk to the usher. And the beauty of learning is, and he taught me a really valuable thing. He says, one of the toughest exercises in any field is be, or try to be, the last person to speak. And it didn't make sense in passing because, Alex is in Vancouver and you're running around with your head cut off. But it was really something that kind of resonated with me in the back of my mind. In a conversation with a group of people, how hard is it for you to be the last person to speak? And the logic is, by the time you speak, if you're the last person, you've accumulated all this data, where everybody stands in the conversation, who the tough guys are, the people that are maybe on the fence. And then when you come forward with all this information, usually the stuff that you have to say has relevance. So that, for me, as crazy as that sounds, almost like philosophically, is something that I just really strive to do. And in these conversations with all these different people, not really piping up with my own opinion, I've learned two things about minor league baseball. One is we've gone through it once, we can't go through it again. So minor league baseball and major league baseball are going to have to find a way to get these guys on the field. You can't lose 2 years of development. You just can't do it. So even if they play their entire 2021 season at the complexes, yes, that's going to be an absolute minefield of disaster for the actual venues throughout North America that house minor league baseball. But the major league players right now, or pardon me, the major league organizations right now, their first priority is their players. You think of the Alec Manoahs, you think of the Adam Kloffensteins, these blue chip prospects within the Blue Jays organization. You can't keep them off a field a second year. So I think, number one, and sorry to make this such a long-winded answer, but the thing that I've heard once from multiple people is there is a contingency plan in place that they will play their entire 2021 season at the complexes. It's completely feasible now that each team has 4 leagues or has 4 teams. And that is the, I guess, safety net that Major League Baseball is putting in place. The other consideration is that you're going to have the opportunity within limited spacing, depending on the state, to bring certain fans back. But here's the caveat to doing this, and I don't think Major League or Minor League Baseball has an answer to this. How are you going to house these players? How are you going to transport them throughout different cities? I mean, you got to remember, every state line brings a new set of circumstance. And then the biggest one that we face is you've got a national border. So of the 160 minor league baseball teams, there's one that has an extra challenge, because if right now, if you were to send a baseball team into Canada, they would have to quarantine for 14 days. And as soon as they leave, even if they go to get a hot dog from the other side of the border, when they come back, it's another 14 days. So things are going to have to loosen up on a lot of fronts, which adds fuel to the fire that complex season is definitely a possibility.
You apologized for it being a long-winded answer. I think it has to be a long answer.
I think so.
Because it's not simple.
What do you see from your perspective?
So I think what you're looking at, I think that there are so many questions that need to be answered. And there are so many factors that we cannot understand because we're not there yet. So right now, cases in the United States are spiking once again. And I think back to what you said with Vancouver, getting the chance to get until June before everything gets canceled and watching to see how things go in April and May. Meanwhile, we're shutting everything down in March. And in our office, we're going, okay, things are shut down now. So probably no baseball in April, maybe no baseball in May, but surely there will be baseball by the 4th of July for us. And there wasn't. So that uncertainty months and months in advance, that's so important to try to figure out how in the world we can get things done. Because as you say, it's true that for these players, they cannot go another year without it. Basically sidelined everybody with the Tommy John. Unless you have a mound in your backyard, unless you are playing pickup baseball, and that's not really the same thing. You don't have the instruction or the strength and conditioning. I have no idea what kind of physical condition all of these players are going to show up in the very next time it's going to be time for them to wind up and play more baseball.
I'm going to totally steal that analogy of the Tommy John across minor league baseball. It's such a great way to look at it. And you're absolutely right. You know, I just think, and I say this lovingly, but Major League Baseball is not worried about the lower levels in the minor leagues right now. They want to worry about the Major League players and that staff. I heard through the grapevine they just laid off another 300 people in Major League Baseball, which is definitely concerning. And then you look, of course, at the trickle-down effect. My thought process, if this is the last thing I can add to at least, this, string of questioning, is the list that everybody talked about initially because it leaked out and then it got retracted and redacted. And now all of a sudden you look around and you say, okay, well, which teams are even going to have, minor league affiliates next year? So here's my question. The list right now is probably the most floatable document that you can have out there, because if there's no baseball next year, and it doesn't matter which 42 teams you want to put on it right now, there's going to be teams that have to file for bankruptcy regardless. There's going to be teams that are going to have to close down anyway. So teams that you may think have made the cut fiscally might not be able to make the cut. Teams that you had on the list might be able to dig deep, burrow down far enough that they can get through this nuclear holocaust of baseball. I sit back and I say to myself, I would like, because of the pandemic, to save baseball in the fact that, you know what, I know you had these 42 teams on the list. I know that you're ready to consensus, but COVID has changed everything. Let's just get baseball back on the field, leave it exactly the way that it was. We know that this is coming. Let's circle back and say 2024 when there's vaccines and regularity. And if you want to make your cuts, then go ahead. But you cannot possibly tell me that in the midst of a pandemic where you're not even sure if you're going to have a season next year, that amidst this, you're still going to go forward with your plan and cut 42 more teams. It makes no sense to me. If anything, it's a great plan philosophically, but the timing just seems off to me.
About that lack of priority for minor league baseball from the major leagues. I think that was especially shown when the minor league baseball season was announced canceled. That immediately followed up with Major League Baseball's announcement of, here's our plan for when we're going to start our year. That until they got that set in stone, until they got that agreed, they weren't even going to think about minor league baseball. So
Yes.
They could have planned minor league baseball all the while that the players were negotiating with the owners. But they didn't care. And I think we're seeing that right now. The World Series is going on. So Major League Baseball has gone, this whole minor league baseball negotiations, we're not going to think about it until our entire season is over. And then, you know what, we'll sleep in and we'll pick up the phone the next day and we'll figure things out. So that lack of priority, I think you're right.
Yeah, I'll tell you this, and I've heard this from multiple people, that the bargaining committee within Major League Baseball has been a disaster right from day one. And we're talking about not ready for it, not prepared, unorganized, no game plan, walking into meetings just throwing mud at the wall. They're on their third, if not fourth, bargaining committee because they just haven't been able to do it. Pat O'Connor rides off into the sunset because I think somebody called his bluff and now he's left-handed holding the bag. I mean, this has been a mitigated disaster for minor league baseball. And there's a lot of franchises out there right now that have said, screw it. There's no leadership at the top, so we're going to try to fend for ourselves. And that's, you know, a dangerous slope because now, of course, Major League Baseball gets to negotiate the way that they want to. But instead of having a unified front from minor league baseball where everybody's collectively pulling the rope the same way, because it's been so loose at the top, because there's been no plan, people, owners who have millions of dollars vested in these clubs are saying, screw it, man, I'll just do it myself because I got to get through this. I need to be on that list of 120. So it's really become a free-for-all. It's extremely disappointing because you were always sold minor league baseball being this one solid brand that was always, you know, unified in its one collective unit of 160 teams. And you're seeing now as the string starts to break apart that everybody's like, you know what, there's no leadership, president's exiting stage right, let's just get what we can done. So now this bargaining committee is going into these meetings with Major League Baseball, and Major League Baseball knows that everybody's leaving the ship. So realistically, I just don't know how Major League Baseball can even save face at this point, much less try to push things forward when they don't even have a unified front.
I don't know if they care about saving face.
At this point, probably not. That's a good point. It's probably not at this point.
Your point about minor league organizations, and we don't know which ones, having difficulties moving forward, and especially if the 2021 season is threatened. When I was in the Southern League, the Atlanta Braves own and operated the Mississippi Braves, and that continues. The Atlanta Braves with the Rome Braves, and there are different minor league baseball teams that have been owned, operated by major league teams. The Syracuse Mets at the AAA level. I would not be surprised if teams declared for bankruptcy and the Major League Baseball teams came right in and said, all right, we'll own and we'll operate and we'll take over because it is all about having that more control, more power.
It's what's going to happen. I mean, you've hit the nail right on the head. I mean, what do you do when there's a fledgling, business that looks like it's going to have to close the doors? You come as a savior at 25 cents on the dollar. I mean, that's essentially what it is. Now, what's funny about that is I'm glad you brought that up. You look at an organization like the Vancouver Canadians, who I think were appraised, or at least it was internally appraised at about $20 million. Let's say hypothetically, give or take, because of the market. It's an Olympic city. It's a heritage brand. There's so many things working for baseball. So you probably appraise it in the $20 to $25 million range. Well, Major League Baseball came out with their set, and this is the thing that's amazing to me. They came out with their set evaluations for what each level's franchise would be worth. And Vancouver, amongst all the other short season Class A franchises, came in between $5 to $7 million. Imagine evaluating your business at $20 to $25 million. And then Major League Baseball, knowing that they hold the hammer, saying, this is what we think your franchise is worth. You don't have any wiggle room. You don't have any other way but to just bow at the knee of Major League Baseball, because what's plan B? Independent baseball, trying to do your own thing? It's never going to happen. So I think for Jake and Jeff, who own the Vancouver Canadians, it's been a really bitter pill to swallow, because they have given their heart and soul to this city, their heart and soul to this franchise. They've resurrected that stadium. God knows how they've been able to do it for as long as they have. And then all of a sudden, Major League Baseball comes out with these ludicrous assessments of what these franchises are evaluated at. And the only thing that I can say, and I don't speak on behalf of the Vancouver Canadians, because I don't think this is the road they would take, but I got to imagine that there are dozens of franchises south of the border that are ready to suit up and go to court over this, because there are, off the top of my head, 60 lawsuits waiting to happen with franchises that are either on a list that now all of a sudden are like, well, wait a second, I've got 5-10-year agreements with my city for this stadium. Those have to be broken, advertise it. I mean, dude, 60 is probably lowballing what's coming Major League Baseball's way. But you know what? It's still pennies on the dollar for Major League Baseball to get through this. That's the problem when it's a David versus Goliath scenario. And because minor league baseball doesn't have a united front, they don't have a leg to stand on.
Hey, everybody find a hobby. Everybody take up painting. Let's figure it out. Of all the times for a pandemic to hit, way to go, pandemic.
Right.
Rob, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Well, Jesse, I just want to say, regardless of if affiliation changes or not, one of my true highlights of working within this Blue Jay system in a weird kind of quirky way up in the Northwest, you are one of the shining lights of this organization. The system is better for having you. And I know you're bashful at taking praise, but you've got a seat in the major league someday whenever that seat opens up. So I'm your biggest fan, and I'll send you a painting to show you my true appreciation.
That would be beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Rob.